see no creed and race. Don't want nobody tell we about leaving. We fight for we thing and this is we place. Take me home.
Good evening and welcome to For the Greater Good, a special production of Trinity TV. This episode entitled Soul of the Nation, as we get set to celebrate 64 years of independence for Trinidad and Tobago, and later in September, 50 years as a republic. Now, Trinidad and Tobago is a nation defined by our multiculturalism, yet beneath the surface, we have certain issues, problems, and divisions. And while a lot has been worked for us over the years, we do have some issues that we would like to continue to work towards. And joining us live on set is His Grace, the Archbishop of Port of Spain, the Most Reverend Charles Jason Gordon, to talk about independence for Trinidad and Tobago and where we are as a country. Your Grace, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Roger. Good to be here.
And 64 years after independence, how do you feel?
You know, I feel good in many, many ways because we've done some amazing things in the 64 years. I feel anxious in some ways because I think we're at a crossroads in the nation that we need to learn how to navigate this one differently from what we've done before. I feel hopeful because we have been resilient in so many ways as a country. We've bounced back from things that other countries didn't think we could. And we didn't think we could bounce back from the 1970 revolution, the coup, and we managed to navigate through murky waters.
Now, our founding father, Dr. Eric Williams, our first Prime Minister, he had a very interesting quote: "Two races have been freed, but a society has not been formed." And he would have written this and said this around independence time. As we reflect on that 64 years later, are we continuing? And you said we've made some good headway, but are we on the road towards continuing to form a nation?
You know, Dr. Eric Williams had some amazing quotes on the independence, on the eve and on the day of independence, pulled together in his book, The People of Trinidad and Tobago. And that quote, I think, is really provocative. So he's pulling from the governor on Emancipation Day in 1838, saying a race has been freed. And now on the eve of independence, he's saying two races have been freed. One from emancipation, one from slavery, and one from indentureship. But that doesn't make us a nation. Right. And what he's put before the nation at the eve of independence is that, you know, a flag, an anthem, colors does not make a nation. Two races, the major races of Trinidad and Tobago, both having their historical wound, one in slavery and one in indentureship, both coming to the land, as Black Stalin will say, we came on the same ship on a different trip, arriving here. Each race in this country could have its whole catalog of wound. And we're good at that. We're real good at that. But the catalog of wound is really the history that has brought us here. What he is saying is the catalog of wound is one thing. We haven't yet become a nation. How do we become a nation? And that isn't by ignoring the wound of each ethnic group that has arrived here, but it doesn't happen either if each one only looks at its wound and not at the other wound. And believe that we are, and start now competing for victimhood. We are the bigger victim because, or we are the bigger victim because. Okay, we've all had our wounds, some more, some less, some terrible. And all of that is absolutely true. But at the end of the day, if we only look at the wound, we wouldn't look at what we have done in the 64 years. And we've done a lot in the 64 years.
Right.
Each one of these major races has had its ancestral challenge, its historical wound. But each one has also been part and parcel of the 64-year experiment that we call Trinidad and Tobago. one of the things he said at the eve of independence, there's no Mother India, there's no Mother China, there's no Mother Africa, even if we could figure out which mother we'll call Africa. There's no Mother Syria, no Mother Lebanon, no Mother Portugal. There's only one mother, Mother Trinidad and Tobago. And a mother cannot discriminate among her children. I think that that is one of the most profound prophetic statements that 64 years later, I want us to remember. We have one mother, Mother Trinidad and Tobago. Each race has found its freedom, but we have not yet found a way to become a nation. And that task of nationhood and building nationhood is really where we are 64 years on.
Right. Annually, we observe certain key dates like Indian Arrival Day and African Emancipation Day.
And we have to.
And we have to. But do you think, as you talked about the wounds, do you think those days reopen the wounds and we keep going back to those wounds annually?
You know, the cultural anthropologists of the Caribbean, Barry Chavans, Jean Besson, even Sidney Mitz, give us another frame that we could use as a nation to celebrate those very important dates. They talk about culture building in the region against all odds, like the family structure coming out of slavery. I mean, they should not even have a family. The way the slaves were treated and the families were mashed up, and they should not, family land. And there's a series of culture building institutions that emerged out of slavery in a very forced context where people use their little spaces of freedom to create what seemed impossible. Now, to me, that's what I want to celebrate in emancipation. That's what I want to celebrate in Indian Arrival Day. What have those who have landed here actually achieved against all odds?
Against the odds.
And I think if we start looking to see what we've achieved against all odds, for the African community, for the Indian community, we will recognize we've achieved more than we could think. Going back to the ancestral homelands is interesting, important, because we come from somewhere. But what have we done here since we have come? And there's so much. In the midst of slavery in Jamaica, there was as much money circulating in the maroon community, the freed slaves who had run away and were in the hills, as there was in the towns and cities of the white planters. They had built an informal economy. Right. Now that's culture building. That's the achievements that we have done.
So sometimes you think, when you're driving a car, you spend a few seconds looking in the rearview mirror and more time looking ahead. And sometimes I guess I get the feeling that we spend too much time looking in the rearview mirror as we look at the wounds and some of the atrocities that were done, and maybe not enough time looking at the present and looking forward.
And the reason for looking backwards is for understanding the forced context in which we emerged. I mean, our ancestors had very little space to make real decisions, but they made real decisions. We have far more space. Are we making real decisions, or are we using that space for licking our wounds and for experiencing this place? Trinidad is not a real place, hashtag. And buying into the colonial idea upon us. Froude, the Oxford professor of history, comes through the Caribbean and says there are no people here in the real sense, in the true sense of the word. And that has haunted us. So J.J. Thomas, a young teacher from the Naparimas, wrote a book, Fraudacity, the Audacity of Froude, and takes him on. C.L.R. James comments on it. Naipaul comments on it. Derek Walcott, in his reception speech for the Nobel Prize, he takes on Froude head on and says, we mightn't be your people, but we are a people, because a city like Port of Spain has dimensions and proportions that are different from your ancestral cities. We don't answer to your dictates and to your aesthetics. We are our own. Now, that's what we have achieved. That is taking the ancestral wound answering it formally, and at the same time showing that what we have actually built in the polyglot nature of the architecture of Port of Spain is a city with its own proportions unlike anywhere else in the world, because we have Spanish and French and British architecture side by side. In one building you could find all of them. That's what we have achieved. And that's what we're not seeing. That there's actually something that has emerged and is emerging out of us. But I think we are in a moment of desolation, and that's blinding us from seeing what we have actually been able to achieve in the 64 years of this experiment on independence that we have been living.
And we're talking about the soul of the nation. So how would you define the soul of a nation? And does Trinidad and Tobago have a soul that, the average person could identify and say, this is the soul of where I come from? When we travel, I think when we travel to other places, we're happy to say we're from Trinidad and Tobago and talk about the red, white, and black and that type of thing. But when we're in the midst of it here and the daily challenges, as you alluded to, confront us, do we remember that greater calling, that greater purpose, that this is what we are as Trinis and Tobagonians?
So I'm using the word in a metaphorical way. So the human being has a soul. It's the indestructible part of us that is created by God, that lasts long beyond our physical entity will exist. It is that which you can't reach to, touch, or see, but without it, we are nothing at all. Right. And I'm using metaphorically because at the end of the day, the soul is different from the spirit. The spirit is the joie de vivre, it's the style of the Trinidadian, how we talk, how we act, how we could party at the drop of a hat. If we win, we lose, we could have a party over that. That's the spirit of the nation. Right. The soul is this indestructible part of who we are, that when we do bad, it colors the soul and the relationship with God, and therefore it colors the way we relate with each other. And in that movement, the soul is the one thing that a human being has that is most precious, because it will last long beyond this time on earth into eternity. And if you don't protect your soul, you have nothing. You hold your whole life. People want to protect their character. That's intriguing. People can say anything about you today on Facebook, and it doesn't have to be even true. Protecting your soul is different. It is knowing that before God, you are right. And in a relationship with God, you are true to yourself and true to your values, true to what you believe, and true to who you are called to become. And I think in this moment of desolation, and in spiritual language, we have either moments of consolation or desolation. In moments of consolation, you know that you are with God and God is with you, and you experience the wind behind your back. You're moving. It's easy to move. It's easy to see, easy to grow. In a moment of desolation, you're in a headwind, and you're not making progress as far as you can see. You're not finding your way forward. I believe the nation is in a desolation right now. And because we're in a desolation, what we're doing is turning on each other, right, and fighting with each other. And because we're in a desolation and we're not seeing the way forward, we are picking on the most obvious fights, the racial fights, the class fights, all the most obvious fights. But in a moment of desolation, all the spiritual leaders have said, you do a couple of things. First, you come back to silence inside. Pull back. Come back to silence. You reflect on the graces you have received in the journey before. And I want to ask this nation, reflect on the graces we have had in the last 64 years. We have had amazing graces in this last 64 years. Let's reflect on the things we have actually been able to achieve together. And the other thing, don't make any major life-changing decisions when you're in a moment of desolation. It will be the wrong decision. And so if I'm dealing with the soul of the nation, I'm asking the nation, let's reflect on the graces. In the 1950s, we had the Americans here. Before the war, we had Tambu Bamboo, we had the African drum, band. With the banding of the African drum, the Tambu Bamboo comes. Then after that, every brake pad, every piece of steel becomes an instrument. Then we had these 55-gallon drums that were brought by the Americans, bringing oil and gas for their use, discarded all through the city as dustbins. Then we took those dustbins, that refuge, that garbage. We took that and transformed it into a musical instrument. And we've used that musical instrument to perform all over the world. And in using that musical instrument and playing the classical and the Trinidadian music on the same instrument, we've demonstrated to the world that what could be garbage could be transformed into nobility and an instrument equal to the piano, equal to any other instrument in the world. That is what we have achieved. And that's a metaphor to guide us for where we are right now. It might seem like we're in a rubbish heap. We might seem like if things bad. It might seem like this, that, or the other. The economy is down. We know that. It's been down for 2 decades. We've been running on a declining economy for 2 decades. We're feeling the pinch of it right now. This is not the time to turn on each other.
Right.
This is the time to ask, what do we still have that we could build together a nation out of all these races that have come here and find a future together with the grace of God?
And as we look at that right now and we talk about the soul, I guess, is something that evolves. And as we continue to make progress, the soul will continue to change and evolve, hopefully in a better way.
So the soul is the eternal part of who we are. As we make progress, the soul will be in a state of grace that will be able to pull the energy, the grace of God, the cooperation of each other into a harmony that would allow us, with our diverse ethnicities, our diverse cultures, our diverse classes, and our diverse religions, to be able to do something that is really what we've been called to. When we were named Trinidad, I mean, he saw these 3 hills. He named us Trinidad. All right, good. But he could never have understood what that significance could be today. Because the triune God is 3 persons that are completely different from each other, and yet hold a unity that is so powerful and so amazing that there is no division in the difference. And that's the other image for us as a people. We are as diverse as the north, south, east, and west. All the continents of the world have landed up here. And that diversity is not a call for us to turn on each other, starting to call each other by names that are derogatory. It's really a celebration, because when I hear steel band, I hear tassa drum beating in the engine room. And that I find, when you go to Jose, you see an African drummer drumming in the midst of the Jose. You see us moving soca chutney. You see us doing the hybridity that we do so well. You can't go to India and ask for a roti and expect to find what we serve out as roti. It is that beauty that we have to recapture. And rather than looking at difference by the skin, by the hair, by the class, by the clothes, we have to see that we are all one people. Freetown Collective last year did a song, Take Me Home,
which we had at the start of the show.
And when I heard that song, something inside of me gave. The soul. They captured the soul of the nation in that song. We don't see no creed or race. Take me home, take me home. Marry me to the heart of Port of Spain. So if I leave, I'm bound to come again. It's the first time I have heard the artist, and Walcott approached it in his Nobel reception speech. But Freetown Collection crossed over it. the relationship between the citizen and the nation is no longer transactional relationship. In 1962, you could say the different races occupying Trinidad and Tobago and the citizens, we were kind of friending with each other, to use the language. And then we've gone through a stage where we are visiting. We kind of visiting, you know, we know each other, we sit down next to each other in work, in school, in church, and we kind of visiting. But they're saying we need to go to the next stage where we're married. And in the Caribbean family structure, the visiting, the friending, the visiting, the marriage is three very different, or the friending, the visiting, the living, and the marriage are four different stages. And I think in the nation, we've gone through the friending, the friending, the visiting, the living. We're living next to each other, but that doesn't mean we're married. We have not yet made a covenant together for this nation's sake. We've not yet said, you are different from me, your ancestors are different from my ancestors. But you know what? We have one nation, Trinidad and Tobago, and we have to commit to her development, to her growth, beyond any difference we have. She must become more important than my tribe, my ancestry, my people. She is what we commit to, and that's what I heard in Freetown Collection. Marry me to the heart of Port of Spain. So if I leave, I'm bound to come again. And that concept of a marriage, of moving this relationship from visiting, from friending to visiting, to living, to marriage, says that we are making a covenant that we recognize that this is all we have. There are nowhere else that we could go. And now that the major nations have made immigration more and more difficult, we have nowhere else to go. We have to make this place an amazing place. And we have talent in every field, everywhere in the world we have shone. Why can't we use that talent to move past our difference to the commitment and the covenant to really build Trinidad and Tobago?
And you talked about the economic challenges that we've been going through for 2 decades. We've also been going through a crime challenge, and not unique to Trinidad and Tobago. All parts of the world have challenges with crime. And we've been living under state of emergency for the better part of almost 2 years. How do you see that affecting our soul, affecting our psyche as we try to move forward and advance Trinidad and Tobago?
You know, since around 2000, this crime scourge has gotten worse and worse and worse. And every time we said it can't get worse, it actually did get worse. Yeah. I was in Gonzales 2003 to 2000 and early 2007. And I saw it up front. I walked with, lived with, worked on a daily basis with 4 of the gangs. 2 of the most notorious gangs in Trinidad and Tobago and their leaders, direct contact on a weekly basis, talking them down from violence, etc., etc. So I've seen it. I know it from the underbelly of the nation. I've walked with it. You know, we have to understand the crime for what it actually is. The crime is actually a cry of the nation for the underdevelopment of segments or pockets in this society. We have pockets in this society that are world class. They could operate on any stage, anywhere in the world. And we have pockets in this society that are so underdeveloped that it is really a shame for the billions that we have spent in national budgets, that we have left the infrastructure, the schooling, the social welfare, the social support, the whole social infrastructure, we've left it so poor in these pockets of underdevelopment. They should have our best teachers in there. They should have a cadre of social workers in there, working with the families. They should have amenities that other parts of the country do not have. We look at them and we say, oh, well, that's crime, and we call their names and we raise our hands. It is not crime first and foremost. It is underdevelopment. We did it. We left them behind. As parts of the nation went forward, we left them behind. And this is the wound, the current wound that we're trying to face right now. So we faced it in different ways. We've had national security attempts for the last 20 years to deal with this. And each minister has made a gallant attempt, and it has kept going up and up and up. So the state of emergency was invoked by the last government, and they ran it twice, and it didn't budge. This government has been running it, and we've come down by 42%. Murder rate has dropped by 42%, the last numbers I saw. I don't know if that still holds, but it was the last numbers I saw. Violent crime and major crimes have also come down significantly. So this is what every citizen asked in the last election. Make this place more safe, please. Just make it more safe. We can't continue. But making more safe requires two things at the very same time. A national plan of social development for these communities, and also pulling back on the license. What we call freedom is really license. The license that the Trinidadian and Tobagonian has taken in doing anything they want, whenever they want, however they want, and working to do anything they want. All freedom must have responsibility. One of the things this government has done is reinforce that notion that you will take responsibility. And I think we can't move forward without a raising of the bar of responsibility. But also, the state of emergency, about 3 months ago, I argued that it should continue. Right. Now I have to argue, it's a drug. And as a drug, it's too easy to use. And this drug of using extreme force to curb the extreme violence, I think we need a little reprieve and a little breath from it. Because all the people now being held by the state of emergency legislation, and I don't know the exact numbers, but it's not one or two, it's more into the hundreds, they either need to be charged or released. Because you can't hold people at will of the government without having a serious charge to lay on them. We are at this crucial moment where what we do next could either turn us into a fight against each other or help us to create a sense of nationhood. We must take more responsibility. And I think that's what a government has to do right now. Say to the citizen, no. You have to take more responsibility and then hold the citizen accountable for that. But using the big stick for too long actually makes it less effective eventually and actually turns it against each other eventually. And so I would argue we need a reprieve. But we need to raise the bar on holding responsibility for our citizens.
Very interesting. So these states of emergencies, I think they have a life of 3 months, and the current one will expire at some point coming up soon. So your suggestion would be that we need to not continue it because it has been extended for various
It has been extended and extended and extended. And I think we need a reprieve right now. And I see the good that this government has done in bringing the crime rate down. And I know they're going to say to me, well, we can't do that without this tool. But then, if you want to do that, then you have to do something else. You have to say then, if we're going to keep this tool, we have to make it more transparent. And in making it more transparent, you have to have at least a judge give you the permission to hold a person again beyond a 3-month period. You have to bring the rest of the law in. Because it's come down to 1 or 2 people having a real lot of power. Right. And that's always a major temptation for any individual, no matter how good, noble, and how intact their soul is. This is a real challenge. And because of the woundedness that we are facing, if I have this much power, and my wound and my power come into the table, I fear that we really need, at this moment, to find a mechanism to deal with the underdevelopment in a very strategic, clear plan for the nation. And there are only about, maybe 20 communities, 25 communities, 30, where we need to do that in a focused way. We need to move away from the state of emergency as the instrument and build instruments of responsibility where the nation is held, where we as citizens hold other citizens accountable for the irresponsibility. Lloyd Best says we're not irresponsible, we are unresponsible. We don't even know how to be responsible, which is Lloyd Best's analysis of this.
Right.
And I think we have to find a new formula in between these things that helps us to grow to the next stage of responsibility.
Very interesting. When we look at other countries and we benchmark ourselves, I know the comparison is always made with Singapore, because in the 60s, we got independence, and I think they got independence around the same time.
Yeah.
And when you look at where Singapore is in terms of national development, crime, and the economy in Singapore compared to where Trinidad and Tobago is, it's a big gap.
Without oil.
Right, without any natural resources.
All they had was geography.
Right.
And what they did was they make themselves a safe harbor. What they did was they literally forced the citizen to take responsibility.
Exactly.
And by taking responsibility, the citizen had to now negotiate a way of living that people didn't like in the beginning, but people are benefiting from it now. The bitter pill for this society is responsibility. And it has to start with the elites of the society. The elites have to take more responsibility for their own conduct, but also for the national development of pockets in the society. And this is not my analysis. This is by V.S. Naipaul, who we love to hate and we love so much. He says in Middle Passage that Trinidad is a picaroon society. From top to bottom, everybody is a hustler. And we will only emerge when responsibility becomes the watchword, and it has to start with the elites, because they have the most space in the freedoms that have become licensed.
Tell us how you see, if we have to develop that point, how do you see that happening in terms of, as you said, the elites taking responsibility? Is it something, you talked about underdevelopment in certain areas, so is it something that you see the elites partnering with the government or doing something on their own to help bring those underdeveloped and under-resourced parts of the country out of that situation?
So let's start with employment. Are we paying a fair wage? Are we interested in the welfare of the family of those employed by us? National development and the undeveloped areas of the community, it starts by people earning enough to do what they need to do as a family. And so it starts there. A little more interest in what's actually happening. Before the maid in the household would have got the books for her children to go to school, and the shoes. And the families understood that while you're working for me and while I can't pay you, I had to make sure that your children get ahead and get what they need. And that mentality that we had before is where I think we have to go again. Right now, we've gone to the American model of capitalism, which is the worst model we have ever seen in the world. Maximum profit, minimum responsibility. And I think businesses could put some of that profit back to the table of national development. Republic Bank is one of the best national institutions in that regard. They give out a lot of money for national development to communities, to peoples, to little organizations. If every business took 10% of the profits and said, something, we're committed to national development, and we're going to go after projects with people who are working with me, every little piece of that would build a nation where we would see development flourishing, responsibility growing, and people finding the ability to flourish in our country.
But over the years, corporate Trinidad and Tobago has been, at least from my point of view, very generous in terms of sponsorships, programs, assisting with various causes, whether it be health causes. We see now a proliferation of 5Ks, and a lot of them have
Absolutely.
beneficiaries, whether it's cancer, autism, World Stroke Day, that type of thing. But somehow still it's not lifting us a little bit higher and taking us out of some of the situations we're in. So we probably need something additional, something more.
A national plan for development. When the British government run the country, they developed this patronage system. And so you got because you were my patron. When we became a nation, we continued the patronage system. You got because you're part of my tribe. You're part of the tribe of the government of the day. And every couple of times when we change the government, oh, well, it's our time now. Right. And the patronage system has meant that we have put the collecting of wealth for the tribe as opposed to the development of the nation. For me, there needs to be a national agenda for social development, beginning with the peripheries and what institutions and processes, what supports and systems the periphery needs, the most difficult parts of the society, what do they need for national development? And we need to do it in a bipartisan way, so that across the floor, whichever government comes for 25 years, this is what we're going to do. Because what happens in 5 years and then a government changes, that gets thrown out, another one comes, that gets thrown out, and so we're zigzagging. Yeah. We need for social development, for education, for health, we need a plan that's more like a 25-year plan. On 3 or 4 areas in the country, so that whoever comes in has agreed already, this is the path we're going to take in these areas. In other areas, let's experiment, let's find new ways and so on. You can't grow up from where we are right now in a 5-year cycle. It needs a much longer cycle to be able to commit to that growth.
Earlier you talked about responsibility, and every citizen needs to take responsibility. Your Grace, I want you to tell the average Trinbagonian what are 2 or 3 things, tangible things that they can do to help Trinidad and Tobago grow, so that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we could look back, maybe even after we're gone, we could look back and say, these are a couple of the things that we actually made a decision to do, but tangible items that we can each say, yes, I believe in that, and that's something I want to do.
Let's start with how we speak with each other. We have become a nation that really speaks badly with disrespect to each other. Let's just take responsibility for speaking to each other as brothers and sisters, as citizens of this nation, the way we've made covenant to the nation. Let's look at our discourse, whether it is on the talk show or in Parliament.
Social media.
And social media. Wherever, let's look at the way we are speaking, and let's treat each other with human dignity. Each human being has infinite dignity and should be treated as such. Let's just start by taking that responsibility as a citizen. Let's go from there to a marriage to the heart of the city or the heart of the nation. And let's recognize that Barrackpore is not Scarborough, and Penal is not Charlottesville. And each one is different, but each one brings something to the national good. But let's have a covenantal relationship. For better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, we are committed here no matter what. So we're not looking at outside as an escape route, but we're finding the ways to build here. Wherever I am, whatever my space of influence is, I'm doing the best I can to build this place because I'm committed here. And then let us ask ourselves a single question every day. What do I need to do for my grandchildren to want to stay in Trinidad and Tobago? Because I think if we ask that question, every day our ethical code will shift, because we stop looking at what I can do to get money for me, and we start asking ourselves, what do I need to do for my grandchild to want to be in Trinidad and Tobago and want to stay here? And I think if we did that, we would find a way. And my last point would be, we need a national examen. What are the graces that we have received from Trinidad and Tobago? Every one of us as a citizen has received amazing graces from this beautiful Twin Island Republic. We have 5,000 square kilometers. We don't have more than that. We rub into each other no matter what we do. We bounce each other up in a function, in a workplace, in a school, in a church, in a mosque, in a mandir, in wherever we are, we bounce up each other. By the doubles man, by the roti stand, in wherever you go. And because the geography is so tight, we have to look at what have we benefited from being a citizen of this nation, and really reflect deeply on this 64 years of our independence. What have we really benefited? And there's so many benefits we have had. What are the graces that we've received? And how do I want to pay that forward for the next 64 years?
Okay, well, Your Grace, any final words to wrap up? I know that's a very strong point as we look ahead to celebrating 64 years and starting year 65. And this year will be 50 years as well as a republic. 1976, yes. Now 2026. So a lot of milestones. I mean, the years keep ticking on.
They do.
And maybe as we look at the progress and the soul of the nation, are we making that type of progress and movement forward? So final words for our viewers as we reflect on this period.
I looked at the United States of America when they were 64 years old. They had a promise that these truths are self-evident, that every person is of equal dignity. 64 years on, they hadn't come to that as yet. They still had slavery. The women still hadn't had a vote. They were still in deep, deep trouble. 21 years later, so 80-something years into independence, they then had a civil war. We are at a fragile moment. And if we don't marry to the heart of Trinidad and Tobago, 21 years on or less, we will have a civil war. And that's my biggest fear. And I don't think we need to. We eat each other food, we wear each other clothes, we light up for Diwali, we celebrate everyone's beauty and uniqueness. I think we can do a lot better than we have done. And we don't have to go through the birth pangs that America went through with a civil war, and other nations like Venezuela went through with civil wars. We don't have to, but we need to take more responsibility individually and collectively. We need some national plans to deal with the underdeveloped parts of our society, so that we find our way 10, 15 years from now to those pockets of underdevelopment being really nice places to live, with human flourishing happening as a normal part of living there.
And you mentioned earlier, we need that national examen.
The national examen. What graces have we received from this beautiful Twin Island Republic? 5,100 square kilometers, and an amazing people with vitality, music, energy, creativity. We have leaders on the world stage. Let's bring that now to building a nation.
Thank you very much, Your Grace, Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, for being with us on this special production of Soul of the Nation for the Greater Good. We thank you for viewing, and we certainly wish Trinidad and Tobago a happy independence. And enjoy, be safe, and happy Republic Day as well, as we have these two celebrations just about 3-4 weeks apart. And as we look at Independence and Republic Day in Trinidad and Tobago, I know many of our nationals as well outside of Trinidad and Tobago will also be celebrating and will be looking very proudly at what we do here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we thank you for viewing, and we certainly wish you God's richest blessing.
We don't see no creed and race.